Hi guys, that's VINEET Pandeey, and you must be wondering that what is that in my hand? It's the last net paper. Well, all the students, those who already have seen paper, they are very much familiar with the first page, and all the students who are going to have their first net experience in July 8th exam, you will find out this thing something different. So before we start the solution of the paper, I'm going to give you the detailed solution. I must tell you what you have to remember here. See, there are 75 questions in paper 3. All you have to remember is you are simply allowed to use black and blue pen, nothing else, no more different colors. And remember friends, do not make any mark, any writing, any cutting, anything on OMR, and plus do not use any whitener or anything, otherwise your result will be cancelled and your result will be put under the category of 666, means for unfair means. Well, let's talk about the paper here, and I'm gonna talk the first question. And before I start the first question, I would just love to say that yes, like just every paper, again, it's all because of it's all actually very easy whatever we conducted in classroom. So here I'll be giving you the very honest review about this paper. I'll solve the questions, and all my students who are going to watch it, approx 14 to 1500 new students and around 3 to 4000 old students, you all gonna watch it. So with every topic I'll talk about whether I have taught it or not, right? And moreover friends, I really want to tell you all, a lot of people have given you the answer key. It's very easy to sit in a corner and to say A, B and C, D because you have internet, Google. Students, they don't want to use it, you use it and you just say. Now we're going to talk about why these answers are correct, why these answers are wrong, and you can see here these questions are in front of you. So let's start the paper. I request you all to have the paper with me so that you can go with these things. Guys, the very first question here is, this Byron work, means the very first line they're saying that the work relates to Lord Byron, revolves around a wife whose husband is presumed lost at sea, and she takes a lover in the absence. Everybody behaves agreeably on the husband's return. Byron's technical skill in verse is in display here as the work counterparts the colloquial and the formal. In short, as I told my all the students, in fact I keep talking about this class student, the net is not that much easy. They will never ask you the surface level question. They have asked a simple question but in a roundabout way. They are talking about the details, they are talking about the reference, and they are asking you the name. The very first thing that I would like to tell you is, here we have a concept of wife whose husband is presumed lost at sea. The very first line can give you the message to all my students who have prepared. I told you that it is option C, Beppo, option number 3rd, Beppo. Beppo is not only the first work written in Ottawa Rima, it's actually a Venetian story. Here what happens, we have a girl Laura whose husband is lost in the sea, and after 3 years when she finds her husband is actually converted into Turk. In short, the book, why it becomes important, why do I teach it in my class? Because we have a reference of a Christian converted to Islam. That's the reason you have to go for this book. This is very important. All my new students, those who are preparing for net exam, please do not forget to go for Don Juan. This is very, very important. Question number 2. Who is the author of the poem Our Casuarina Tree? 10 days back I was teaching the same thing in my class. So all my students, hope you know that Our Casuarina Tree I taught, and I said that Toru Dutt, who has been compared to John Keats, has famously written 2 to 3 works. Toru Dutt has written Casuarina Tree, Lotus, and then Lakshman, where Sita is actually concerned about her husband. In Lotus, where the god of love wants a flower which is undisputed queen of flowers, and Casuarina Tree like a russet trunk, like a huge python on a russet trunk winding round and round. I told you that the line has reference from W.B. Yeats' work like a widening Zaire, right? So remember, this is the right answer here. Casuarina Tree, it's one of the easiest questions for you all. In this Jacobean play, the Black King and his men representing Spain and the Jesuits are checkmated by White Knight and Prince Charles. White Knight, Prince Charles. Guys, it's very easy because the very first line is actually giving you a message that it has a scene of chess. And moreover, if you remember, I told you about Middleton. Middleton has written a game of chess where what happens, there are 2 kings and they have been represented by as Black Knight and White Knight. Not a single name has been used. So as I suggest you to read the question again, it's a Jacobean play where we have 2 different knights. Remember, the Black King stands for Philip IV of Spain, White King stands for James I. an actual story, actual, the reason why it's a comic satire, why it's related to a particular real story. There is a marriage of Charles Swan to Infanta Maria, a girl of some, Spanish origin. There is a marriage thing, and this is the reason it has been written in a comic satire way, published 1624. And in the chest, the black pawns, they stand for Spain, white pawns, they stand for English. So you just have to go for simple reading. Along with this, for net coming exam, you have to go for A King and No King. Make sure you read it. Question number 4. Frederick Jameson associated postmodern culture with space capitalism. Guys, again, it's a very easy question. If you remember, we have done postmodernism, and moreover, I give you the reference of late capitalism in my video also and in my class also. See, Frederick Jameson, he has discussed market, monopoly, imperialism, everything he has discussed. It is not that he didn't talk about all these things, but the most important thing is multinational things. See, Frederick Jameson is actually related to late capitalism. He talks about low culture, high culture, depthlessness, and multinationality is actually his main point of, the main concept that he has read. So I'll just suggest you to read the question once again so that I can give you the pointed out things. Frederick Jameson's associated postmodern culture. So in short, if you remember that once he wrote a very famous work which was called The Cultural Logic of Late Capitalism of 1991. That was the work where he talks about all these things and moreover gives the analytical detail of depthlessness. So in short, remember, if they ask you the question next time in net exam, they may ask you about depthlessness, high culture, low culture, and all other postmodern things related to market economy. Now we go for question number 5. Remember, question number 5, Evelyn Waugh is actually a famous writer who has been repeatedly asked in net, and all my students who remember that I talk about Handful of Dust and I question them that where do we have a title taken in, and they say that, sir, it's Wasteland, where there is a line, I'll show you fear in the Handful of Dust. So actually the title has been taken from Wasteland, where Handful of Dust, written by Evelyn Waugh, talks about a famous character, Tony. The book was published in 1934, and here what happens, Tony, he simply goes to Brazilian jungle where he has his son with him, and he tells him a story about a mule. The question asks the name of the mule, and it's option A, Peppermint. Peppermint is the name of that mule. Remember this thing, friends, that this is very, very important work, and what you have to read again is that the work is inspired by the man who liked Dickens. So remember this thing. Guys, question number 6. The Oxford English Dictionary was published in 12 volumes for its current title, and taken was, it's in 1933, because Oxford English Dictionary, as I told all my students, then in 2000 it became available on online version, and moreover the dictionary was actually started in 1857, written first in 1857, but it got its first title under the publishing timing 1884, which was called A New English Dictionary on Historical Principles. Now later it was given another title like the materials collected from the Philological Society, which was given in 1895, and finally in 1933 we have the name OED, Oxford English Dictionary. Question number 7, again very easy question, as I tell all of my students that if you go for exam, remember Tristram Shandy is more and more important. Why so? Because when you complete all the 4 wheels of the novels, you simply talk about the great writers, you talk about Tom Jones, you talk about Pamela and all, but remember it's just Lawrence Sterne's Tristram Shandy which is actually called one of the modern novels. And all my students, if you remember, I told you that they will ask you that in which book the character takes birth, because first, second and third book they entirely talk about the background story. It is actually book 3rd where the protagonist takes birth. Now what you have to remember here in advanced knowledge is that it was actually published in 2 versions, because they sometimes ask you how many publications are there, how many versions are there. So 1759 the book had 2 versions, 1767 it had total 9 versions, 9 volume book. That is also a net question. And remember why it's famous, because it deals with digression, double entendre, graphic novels, and many more modern styles like shifting narratives and all. And moreover, this book was attacked heavily because it has lots of references, in fact line to line copied from John Locke's essay concerning human understanding. So in short, it was attacked for plagiarism. Moreover, Samuel Johnson didn't like this work, and he said in 1776, nothing odd will do long Tristram Shandy did not last. Then Anthony Trollope, he has taken a famous character, Mr. Slope, in his famous book Barchester Tower. The character Slope comes from the same book. And moreover, the German writer, the great German writer Hermann Hesse, who was a Nobel awardee, he took reference in his book The Journey of the Novel from the same book. Guys, so question number 8. Miguel de Cervantes' inimitable Don Quixote foreshadows metafictional moorings when the novelist. The very first thing I keep on telling you all, that it's just not easy to apply NET and qualify NET. A lot of students, they just face problems in understanding vocabulary. I ask you all, how many of you know the word inimitable? What is inimitable? It's just that which cannot be imitated, which cannot be copied. Then foreshadows, which talks about something which is going to happen, kind of prophecy. And then moorings, where you talk about relations or something kind of anchor, some kind of related thing. So in short, when you got the question, you understood the question, now we can go for the options. The question is that Cervantes' Don Quixote, it gives us a strong message that the book is a metafictional thing. How do we get the strong message that it is metafictional? Remember this thing. Friends, let's go for these options and find out whether the book is metafictional or not. Option A says that the first chapter of the narrative are recreated from the archive of La Mancha. Means the very first line, they say that first chapters of the narrative means partially, not the complete book. It means there is no relation of the rest of the chapters. We cannot trust the rest of the chapters. So it gives us a message that it is kind of fiction. Second thing, it says that it's a faithful rendering of a Catalan text in Spanish. Guys, faithful means very accurate copy, so it is not metafictional. Says that part of it has been translated from Arabic by the Moorish author Sidi Hameti Benengeli. See, he's saying that part of it has been translated from. Again, the part of it means he says that yes, there is a vacancy of rest of the book which is written from my point of view and can be fictionalized. Then he says that he is rewriting. Rewriting is that you're writing again the same thing. And the history. So the word history, historical, chronological, it makes sense that it is not metafictional. So in short, in options you had just first one and third one. So the final answer would be 3. It is A and C. The next question in this theory of mimesis, Plato says that all art is mimetic by nature. Art is an imitation of life, and to argue his case, he gives the example of one of the easiest question. He simply talks about chair. So guys, as I told you that Don Quixote is most important, Plato's imitation idea, cave theory. If you watch my last video on Plato and criticism, you will get to know that we have talked about chair and thing. Plato gives idea about the painter who gets the idea. Remember, Plato, when he was talking about these things, he simply believed that philosophers are much better. Philosophers, they have ideas, while poetry, they have illusions. And poets must be banned in any ideal republic because they are threat to that republic. And moreover, Plato's imitation theory, if we talk about these things, it has been studied by Eric Orbeck. Eric Orbeck's mimesis book, the book which deals with mimesis, is most important. So all you have to remember is Plato's concept of imitation or mimesis, chair, painter, the poets, why they are banned, and the musical instrument which was banned by Plato. Question number 10. The translation of Gita into English in 1784 called Bhagavad-Gita. I'll just put the question on the screen. Please focus again. The translation of Gita into English in 1784 called Bhagavad-Gita marked, in William Jones' opinion, an event that made it possible for the first time to have reliable impression of Indian literature. Who was the translator? It's very simple. It's Charles Wilkins. Charles Wilkins was one of the members of Royal Society and also the founder member of Asiatic Society. So it is Charles Wilkins that you have to remember his name. Moreover, don't forget this, that Charles Wilkins, when he was doing this translation, he got the help of Panchanan Karmkar. Panchanan Karmkar was a famous typist who is also known for being first typist of Bengali language. Guys, along with these things, let's think about the other options that has been given here, given here. Option 2, H.J. Collebrook. So the very first thing is actually H.T. Collebrook. H.T. Collebrook is the first great Sanskrit scholar in Europe. He has been called this. And then we have Nathaniel Hellhead, option 4. He is famous for writing the great book, the Gentoo Code, which is also called Ordination of the Pandits. It was published in 1778 and He is the first man to set a press in West Bengal. So the Bengali press, it was owned by him. Let's go for question number 11. One of the plays among the following contains the characters called Zeb, Dan and Mac. I will accept this thing that yes, we do not teach this. This is actually in-depth question. The reason is we teach every man, we teach Castle of Perseverance, but we do not teach marshals and second shepherds of play. So yes, I can accept my fault, but it's not a conventional question. It is something in-depth. I can bet that you will hardly find second shepherds play details anywhere, and moreover, it was a mystery play. So what you have to remember here is that these characters like Call, he's a shepherd actually. Then we have another character Jib. Jib is also a shepherd. Then we have a character Dan. Dan is actually a lazy shepherd. So that thing you have to mark. And then Mac. Mac is actually a thief. So in short, they are talking about those moralities and mystery plays. And here the answer would be the second shepherd's play, because this is the book that talks about all these characters. And remember, if we go for the most important option here, the Castle of Perseverance. Castle of Perseverance is not only important morality play, but it is the play which also has a symbolic relation to the round theater, or you can also call that arena theater. Question number 12. Teresa in Milan Kundra's novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being. The very first thing when I was teaching in my class 4 to 5 days back, I said Milan Kundra is not important. So I accept my fault. I said that it's not important. But unfortunately, I forgot to check the last paper. So here we have a question. Teresa in Milan Kundra's novel, The Unbearable Lightness of Being, troubled by Thomas' promiscuity. See what happens, I have read it. Thomas is actually a good man, a good-hearted man, but he's a womanizer. He has a weakness. He's a womanizer. He falls in love with the girl Teresa. Teresa is a girl with spiritual, inclination. She comes from a bad family where her mother tortured her a lot. Teresa is aesthetic. She falls in love, and she's very, her love is very much permanent. But the person here, Thomas, he is actually having conflict. He doesn't want to cheat his wife, and he's actually willing to go for multiple sex affairs. And here we have another most important character, Sabina. Sabina is actually mistress of this man, Thomas, and she also plays very important role. The book actually deals with sex, lust, and dreams. So the question here is that what are the dreams of Teresa? Teresa is feeling actually insecure, and that's a direct answer that you have to go for. That first thing, she was very much scared of cats, because in her childhood she got attacked by cats. So she would always have dreams of cats attacking her. Second thing, she would always assume that her body has been plagued by dead bodies, and she dreams that she's dead, stripped of her clothes. So the answer here is A and D. These are the answer. Let's go for question number 13. So guys, question number 13. The opening lines of Wordsworth's Immortality Ode. The very first thing is that these lines are actually opening lines. So the earth and every common sight to me did seem, apparelled in celestial light, the glory and freshness of dream, closely resembles Coleridge's lines. There was a time when earth and sea, skies, the bright, the green, the vale, and all these things. Guys, it's very, very easy. I'm sure you can relate. But remember, I'm going to tell you this. For the first time, this has been asked. And here, partially I'm responsible because I teach Immortality Ode, I teach their lines, but we don't go in detail of Coleridge's famous work, The Mad Monk. And remember, when you read The Mad Monk, you will go for the last lines where he talks about that I left the place, I went away, and the reference here is of Solitary Reaper. You can see the Solitary Reaper on your screen where you have some lines also. Here the lines taken from Coleridge have been compared to these lines. Here sees the voice in deep dismay, down through the forest I pursued my way. So they may ask you a question again, this kind of, where that these lines have a direct relation to Wordsworth's famous work Solitary Reaper. Next one, question number 14. Christiana Rossity's Goblin Market. Again, a most important question, and I told all my students that do not miss this. I kept on telling that in fact, I remember the last time when I said that I will teach Goblin Market next day because I'm not that much prepared. I have to revise it. Why so? Because teaching Goblin Market is an easy thing, but you teach Goblin Market from lesbian point of view, it becomes tough. This was the reason I taught it next day. What happens here, we have two girls, Lizzie and Laura. They represent women, they represent beauty, they represent seduction, like they are ready to be seduced. But they go to the market where we have those fruit sellers, and these goblins, they start attracting them, calling them, come buy our fruits. And these fruits are actually the youth, showing them kind of attraction. These girls, they get seduced, but one of them is actually sensible. She tries to control her sister Laura, but Laura doesn't listen. Laura goes to buy the fruits and she's actually seduced. And here Lizzie offers herself to Laura. She says, drink me, eat me, which is actually having a lesbian relation. So the concept here is that pick the one which is not true. So not true thing is that option C, Laura, who goes to the market again, does not see the goblins but hears only their shrill cry piercing the air. She doesn't go to the market again. That's what you have to remember. Question number 15. In which of these prisons is Defoe's character Moll Flinders born? Guys, do you really need any easy question more than that? That's very easy. And all my students, if you remember, when I was dealing with Victorian writings, I told you there were two different prisons. They were very, very important. And the students of Delhi, yesterday only I was asking about Newgate prison and Marshalsea prison. Remember, when people study Victorian literature, they hardly go for Skimity ride and breaking the bones through wheels, and moreover talking about Marshalsea prison and Newgate prison. A lot of teachers, those who boast you, like they guide you, they have no idea what is these. See, it's just that Marshalsea prison was actually used for those defaulters who would take money but were not able to return. And Newgate prison was actually the prison which was related to criminals. So what happens here, that here we have Moll Flinders and she is daughter of a convicted lady. Convicted means her mother was already in the prison and she takes birth in the prison. Newgate was the famous prison, and if you remember, there was a series of Newgate novels when people started celebrating the lives of rogues and criminals. The famous writer here is Bulwer Lytton. Bulwer Lytton's Paul Clifford and Eugene Aram is a part of Newgate novel, while W.M. Thackeray criticized Bulwer Lytton and other writers for celebrating the rogues. So the right answer here is Newgate. Question number 16. In which poem does Judith Wright lament the erasure of native culture in the following lines? The song is gone and the dance is secret with the dancers in the earth, the ritual useless and the tribal story. Well, I read that line for you actually. I don't need to have those lines because Judith Wright is actually famous environmentalist of Australia. She talks about Aboriginal rights. She's an activist, and the line when I read that lamentation of the erasure of native culture, it's actually Bora ring. Why so? You must be knowing those kind of sitting tables and made of rocks. The Aboriginals, to sit there, they would use the soil, they would get them baked under the sun, and they would make the sitting arrangements. These things have been broken, these things have been done sabotaged, and they have been removed. So in short, Judith Wright, talking about Bora ring, she talks about the alien, the outsider, those who have killed their culture, the fourth world people, and actually are against Aboriginals. Those who are preparing for this coming exam, I suggest you do not forget to read Moving Image and 80 Acres, a short story. Question number 17. Years before, Winston Smith, the protagonist of George Orwell's dystopia, one of the must read, ask yourself, I must have told you, I have repeated it and again, that do not go to exam if you're not prepared with George Orwell's 1984. So what happens here? He talks about the evidence of the party's dishonesty and how he gets the evidence of the party, how he gets to know that the party is actually dishonest. So all you have to do is that find out the right answer. A photograph which proves that some citizen accused of a crime was out of the country while it was committed. What happens here? There is the crime which has taken place in the city, and the authority, the big brother, they arrest somebody who has been called the accused, but accused is actually a good man and a threat to big brother. So big brother, what he does, they use all the false evidences and get the accused imprisoned, and that's how Winston Smith realizes that he is not safe under that rule, under that colonization controlled by big brother. Those who are gonna read it, I'll tell you, 1984 is very important. Go for Newspeak language, talk about Ministry of Love, Ministry of Fear and all, and remember, big brother is watching you. That's the famous line. So make sure you read it, make sure you prepare it. And guys, after question number 17, we have question number 18 here, and I must tell you it's a very easy question. The Indian Queen. You know what, when I teach in my class, and many of you will watch it, you remember guys, when I teach you in the class, I ask you who has written Indian Queen, who has written rival queens, and who has written queen's rival. And you also remember, when I talk about Queen's Rival, I tell you that it's famously written by Sarojini Naidu, where Queen Gulnar talks to King Feroz saying, "Give me a rival, O King Feroz." So all my students, they can connect it to very easily, connect to the question in an easy way. Well, the question is, the Indian Queen is, it's very simple. It's written by Dryden in verse. Well, the advanced detail is that it is actually written in collaboration with Robert Howard. Robert Howard was husband of Dryden's sister, and this, you can simply also go for these details that it's in verse, plus it deals with the Peru and Mexico settings. Moreover, Spanish invasion has been used here. And yes, if I go for multiple options, here we have option D, which is a fictional account of life of Maharani Gayatri Devi. Well, it is not related at all, but I will tell you that yes, the great Maharani of Jaipur, Maharani of Rajasthan, Gayatri Devi, she has been remembered in a famous work, A Princess Remembers. So make sure you write it down. Question number 19, J.M. Coetzee disgrace. I seriously don't understand why these net paper are very easy. It's very easy, guys. I keep asking my students, tell me about Professor Lurie. Well, the question here is that the question number 19, disgraced David Lurie is working on an opera in the life of one of the romantic poets. It's very simple. It's Byron actually. What happens? First thing, the professor is actually working on romantic literature. He's teaching this. Second thing, he's working on the last years of Byron's life in Italy, and it's an opera. Third thing, it's a post-apartheid novel. So those who have taken coaching classes, ask your teachers why they didn't teach you what is post-apartheid novel. And remember friends, J.M. Coetzee is 2003 Nobel awardee, plus Disgrace is a Booker awardee book, and J.M. Coetzee is one of the great writers to have double Booker awards for Life and Time of Michael K, where K was dedicated to Kafka. Here what happened? We have Professor David Lurie. He has illicit relations with a student, and when the affairs are revealed, he doesn't even go for accepting sorries and all, and he's expelled. When he comes back, he finds that his lesbian daughter is raped. The condition is actually post-apartheid condition, means the shifting narratives, the shifting of powers, and the shifting of the center of power structure. And moreover, remember, J.M. Coetzee disgrace is example of Dorp's Roman, DORPS, Dobbs Roman. Hope you understand what is Dobbs Roman. Question number 20. There is no unity or absolute source of myth. It's an assertion, and the focus or the source of the myth are always shadows and virtualities which are elusive, unactualizable, non-existent in the first place. Any search for this discursive unity in the myth of therefore is misplaced. Guys, you know why I'm smiling? Because many of you must be wondering why assertion and reason they are trying to relate. I'll tell you, the lines have been taken from Derrida's Science, Structure and Play. Remember this thing, what they want to say. There is no unity or absolute source of the myth. The very word myth means mythology. So we do not have any exact meaning of the mythology. What we do is that these myths are transferred from generation to generation. We do not know the reality of those myths. They are simply the native versions of those cities and places, and they keep transferring from ages to ages, generation to generation. Second thing, what they say is that if you try to source the myth or you try to find out, you will always have shadows, differences, virtualities, elusive, means you can never go for the exact idea of the myths. So here the answer would be both A and R are true, and R is actually the correct explanation. Question number 21. Which of the following landscapes of England figures prominently in the poetry of Ted Hughes? Oh my god, I really missed. Why did I just miss that exam? If you remember, I was attempting exam but I could not reach to my center. I really missed that. It's very simple. Ted Hughes is known for his animal imagery. Ted Hughes is also known for the famous thing that he was husband of Sylvia Plath. When Sylvia Plath committed suicide, people targeted Ted Hughes and started beating him. He has written Crow Wakes and then Crags and many other works. But the most important thing, he wrote last poetry, Birthday Letters, where he talks about Sylvia Plath's death. And the recent thing is that in 2010, this will not be told to you by anybody else. I am telling you, in 2010, his last letter was republished. It was discovered and republished, and that deal with the last 3 days of Sylvia Plath's life. Now the question is that what is the setting of his poetry? It's very simple. His own birthplace. It's Yorkshire Moors. It's simple. Question number 22. The title of MC Chagla's autobiography. Guys, MC Chagla is actually not related to literature and he's not directly the part of literature. And that's the beauty of NET exam, that they can ask you anything. Well, you can see MC Chagla's photo on the screen. And MC Chagla is very famous for his own biographical work. Like, he was the cabinet minister, chief justice of Bombay High Court, and he wrote his own biographical work. It is also called that his masterpiece, because the biographical literature, they always talk about things where they reveal the actual happenings. So his famous work is Roses in December, which was published in 1973. And remember, here he criticized Indian emergency. Now the best thing is they have given few more options. Like, we go for Memoirs of My Working Life. Remember, Memoirs of My Working Life is actually the autobiography of M. Vishwaraya, the famous engineer. The option 2, Without Fear or Favor, is actually autobiography of hockey player Joginder Singh, also known as Gindi. And The Pen as My Sword is autobiography of the great journalist K. Rama Rao. That's how you have to go for these things. Make sure you remember them. Now, question number 23. Who or which among the following gave the expression "a leopard cannot change its spots" in English language? All my students, they actually know this when I told you all that King James Bible 1611 is the actual Bible used now. King James, when he became the King of England in 1603, he formed a committee of 47 scholars in 1604 and asked them to revise and rewrite the Bible. Before this Bible, there was Wycliffe, Tyndale, and many others like Beech's Bible, Great Bible, Geneva Bible. But then, after King James, he launched his Bible in 1611, which is also called the Bible sanctioned by the Parliament and the most authorized Bible. And that you have to remember here, that this is the Bible which has given actually maxims, proverbs in English literature. So whenever you find a proverb or in maxims, remember, either you have to go for this Bible thing, or if it's an American sense, go for Benjamin Franklin. Question number 24. Which of the following is not true about Albert Camus' novel The Plague? Guys, first thing, Albert Camus is the great writer of existentialism, absurdity, a French writer. And as we all discuss, I keep on telling my students that The Plague and The Outsider are more important than any other work. And now, as you can see on the screen, that here we have Plague, which is actually related to having those messages related to religion, life, values. What happens here? Dr. Rakes is the first person who realizes that there is the outbreak of plague, and he thinks his wife is the first victim of plague, but actually is Mr. Michel who becomes the first victim of the plague, and he dies of this. The question is that what is not true? So we go for all these options. They are technically right, but what happens here? Option B, Penelux interprets the plague in his first sermon. This is totally wrong, because he is a priest. He talks about sermons. He says that yes, God is punishing us, but then he himself gets confused why a young kid, the most innocent person, why did he die? And then he realizes that death has nothing related to the kind of thing religion, and moreover he himself also dies in the same plague. What you have to remember is, when you read it, remember it is the French city of Oran. Guys, the question number 25. John Lydgate begins his Siege of Thebes with the prologue of 176 lines, in which he imagines himself joining Chaucer's Pilgrim's Canterbury. It's very simple, no need to read the detail. All you have to remember is that John Lydgate, when he was trying to reply Chaucer's Canterbury Tales, he started the same procedure, going for the first narrator. All those narrators, they'll be telling tales, and his own narration has a direct reference of the Knight's Tale. The Knight's Tale, Parliament Archive talks about English kings and all, and he has taken the reference of Henry IV, Henry V, Edward III and Edward II. So the direct answer is the Knight's Tale. But yes, I will accept this, that we do not teach John Lydgate's Siege of Thebes. So in the next batch, I'll start teaching the same thing. Question number 26, Stephen Krashen. In my last class, yesterday's class, I was teaching this. Stephen Krashen's theory of second language acquisition consists of 6 main hypotheses. Friends, I must tell you, there are no 6 hypotheses. It's just 5 hypotheses. People add 6th one, so I can tell you it's very simple. The input hypothesis, it's there, and it is actually there. The monitor hypothesis is there. Then we have effective filter hypothesis. Yes, 3 of them are absolutely right. You can also go for like natural order order hypothesis, reading hypothesis, which is called the sixth hypothesis, as the option, the writing hypothesis, is totally wrong. You can go for acquisition learning hypothesis, reading hypothesis, input hypothesis, monitor hypothesis, and the last one, the natural order hypothesis. So that's how you have to go for these things. The question number 27. Among Derek Walcott plays in which there is an exploration of colonial relationship through the Robinson Crusoe story? Should I tell you, it's very easy question. Why so? Because option A, pantomime, which was published 1978, has a character. He himself introduces in the opening line that the play is actually an adaptation. Make sure you remember Derek Walcott for the famous work Omerus and Dream on a Monkey Mountain, where in net exam the question of the character Makak has been asked for 2 times, and Omerus is actually reworking of Odyssey. So you can go for the questions here, that among Derek Walcott's plays, so in the play we have a character Harry Trevu, and Harry Trevu, he himself talks about that it's an adaptation of Robinson Crusoe, talking about colonial rules. So guys, this is how we're gonna solve the more and more questions. Wait for other things. Along with this, all my students, those who are working very hard, I must tell you, this is actually very easy. It's like we are going to publish in a part and part way. It takes time, so wait for my second video, part 2, and yes, you can write your comments, you can talk about all those things. And to get maximum updates, or those who want to avail the previous paper solving audios, you can WhatsApp me on my number 85870 35827. Take care. Bye bye.